Montreal, the everyday and the extraordinary. The Elias Macco Show on CJAD 800.
Trudy sitting in for Elias again this week. Chinatown, big announcement by the city and officials there about a revitalization plan. It has been, I think, long awaited. That district has been asking for more support for a number of years to help preserve a historic and culturally significant neighborhood. In recent times, Chinatown has been set with problems related to homelessness and the congregation of homeless people in the district because of services being offered in and around there. City officials say they are turning words into action by unveiling a plan that includes things like having a cleanliness brigade going out, looking at putting in, for example, a building with a mix of social housing, community and green space and businesses at the corner of St. Lawrence and René Lévesque. Here to tell us more about the plan and give us some reaction to it is Bill Wong, Director of the Montreal Chinatown Development Council. Bill, welcome to CJAD.
Thanks for having me.
Were you in the loop as the City of Montreal put this plan together?
Yes, I was consulted. I think that it's a little early to talk about all the changes going to happen in Chinatown, but I think that is a very, very positive initiative.
Well, the head of the executive committee, Claude Pinard, the chair of the executive committee, he's also the councillor for Saint-Jacques district, says that administration is doing more for Chinatown, has done more in the past 10 months than the previous Plante administration had done in 8 years. Would you agree with that assessment? Totally.
I think that Mr. Pinard has put his action in place right now. I think that is long overdue, that Chinatown deserves that kind of recognitions. And also, I think that you look at Chinatown, that is we need to concentrate on security and also the economic development for the area right now.
So by security, are you referencing street crime? Are you referencing vagrancy? What do you mean by security?
Well, first of all, I think there's so many homeless people hanging around Chinatown, and also the drug addict. I think the drug addict is getting out of control here in this area. I guess because, first of all, I think that Chinatown is underdeveloped. That's why you have a lot of alleys and empty stores, empty buildings. So that really attracts all these unwanted people there. So I think that what we really need to do is we need to come back with to work with Mr. Pinard to come up with a strategy. Where is Chinatown going to be in the next 3 to 5 years? So I think that it's a good start. I think that we have to sit down and then start looking at all the things surrounding Chinatown that we need to revise. Look at we only talk about the negative stuff, okay? I think that we have to look at all the positive stuff. All our neighbors in Chinatown, I think everything has been built up. There's a lot of development here surrounding Chinatown, but interior Chinatown, we need a plan. We need to do something more drastic. As Mr. Pinard says, that we have to raise the profile of Chinatown internationally, and how we can receive all these tourists coming in, because we're right next to the convention center, eh? So there's plenty of hotel around Chinatown. So we have to look at all the stuff that we need to do. You know.
Where would you start then? The plan that was unveiled yesterday talked about better maintenance, a dedicated cleaning brigade to, address just the day-to-day accumulation of garbage. In any busy district, this is generally a concern. Where concretely, where would you take it from there when you're talking about ambitious development plans?
Well, first of all, I think that we start with priority cleaning. We start with the action of public security. Then we're going to go on with the economic development of interior Chinatown. And I think there's many projects right now that is on the drawing board. And that is positive. And Chinatown has gone through a lot of changes in the last, I would say, 20 years. That I think that a lot of economic pressure for us to develop is there. That to do all the cleaning, I think that is added, to what is needed in Chinatown because it's an old district. It's the only district that is not fully developed yet. That is, I'm talking about the downtown Montreal. That where our neighbors all build up, and there's high rises, there's residential, there's new business. So I think that the first step is to clean up, and then we'll take time to develop Chinatown. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, we need to come up with a plan. How are we going to do that?
It is especially tricky considering the city itself says this is a historic district that's culturally significant. So you would think that any development would have to be respectful of the historic and cultural importance of the district.
I totally agree. I mean, we have something that is, I guess, nobody has, which is cultural. It's a vibrant center. And it's also the second most visited tourist spot in Montreal after Old Montreal. So I think that we're right next to Old Montreal, so it's naturally for people to just walk down to Chinatown, see what we have. That's another reason why we have to come up with a plan how we get the mix economic development and the cultural part.
What about local residents? I guess people who live in Chinatown are like people who live in any part of a downtown area of any city. They like the vibrancy of that lifestyle. They like the action on the street, the fact that you can walk places. But at the same time, you often hear pushback against too many visitors, too much street action, too many festivals that disrupt traffic and so on. Any concerns about that?
For the time being, I think, we live in Canada, Quebec, that's a very cold city. And I think that we have all these action during the summer, but in the winter we lack a promotion or activity like that because on the street level is very quiet in the winter. So what we need to do is stress how we're going to build up this activity during the winter. And in the summer, it's not a problem. I don't think that anybody complains because Chinatown is a commercial center which is very vibrant, and then also in the parameter of Chinatown, that's many residence buildings. So I think that we have to look at that. How we're going to balance all these things.
All right. Well, we look forward to what is to come for Chinatown. Bill Wong, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bill Wong is director of the Montreal Chinatown Development Council. In a moment, we will talk about why an AI tax may be driving up the cost of the electronics you want to buy, right down to a TV or a laptop. And it's not all inflation in there.
You've heard the chaos. Now you can see it. Hello. Oh my God. Watch all your favorite podcasts from start to finish right inside the free iHeartRadio app.
Gets the blood going, huh?
Catch every laugh and eye roll on shows like the Tom Green Farmcast and Park the Bus. Now with full video.
We're building a ramp for Tony Hawk.
It's the same hosts and the same chemistry with all the hilarious moments you've been missing right on your screen.
Cheers.
Open the free iHeartRadio app, search video podcasts, and tap watch.
Time is valuable. Thanks for spending your morning with us. The Elias Macco Show on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Trudy sitting in. Have you shopped around for a laptop, a smartphone, a TV, or any other gadget lately? Well, prices have been creeping up. It's not all due to inflation. That's just one factor. But industry experts have started referring to what is called an AI tax. Put that in quotation marks because it's not really a tax per se. Manufacturers are in a race to build artificial intelligence features directly into everything from your computer and your phone to household electronics. You know the fridge that you can use to keep track of your grocery list and it alerts you when you're low on milk and, yada, yada, yada. You can even get Wi-Fi enabled washer dryers now. It boggles my mind why this would be needed, but there you go. The added cost of more powerful chips, larger memory, and all this hardware, well, guess who's paying for it? Joining us now, CTV tech analyst Carmi Levy. And I guess my first question to you, Carmi, after I say good morning, is it worth the money? Hello, Carmi.
Good morning, Judy. So great to be with you. I mean, that's the question everyone's asking, right? Is it worth the money? Should I be buying now? Should I delay? What's the strategy as prices for everything from smartphones and laptops and tablets to, devices in our homes that we never thought would have, these chips in them, but miraculously they do. And it's driving everything up. And, the problem here, and you explained it wonderfully in the intro, is that, AI uses a lot of compute power. It takes a lot of kind of oomph, a lot of energy, to process a typical AI request. In comparison, when you ask ChatGPT a question, it will use 10 times as much energy to get you that answer as a Google search does. And so multiply that out by, I think the last I checked, there are about 2.5 billion ChatGPT prompts every day. And that's just one platform. You multiply that out, and that's a lot of energy, a lot of electricity, a lot of computing power. And, we talk about data centers. We need data centers in order to provide all of that computing power. They're stuffed with high-powered computers that need a lot of RAM, a lot of random access memory, a lot of storage, a lot of solid-state drives. And because those are being built at such a frantic pace, they're soaking up the supply that would normally go into the laptop that you're buying your kid for school. Or the phone that you buy every couple of years. And so they're calling it the AI tax, they're calling it Ramageddon, Rampocalypse, but it means that one company after another, and Apple was the last one, the most recent one to announce its price increases, has been, they tried to eat the cost increases for as long as possible, but now it's starting to hit us. And so your average laptop, a few $100s more than it was a few months ago. Your average smartphone, also more expensive. And if you're looking at that new iPhone that's going to be introduced next month, there's ample speculation, and I'm willing to, place a rather large bet if I were a gambling person, that those prices are going to go up as well. And there are a lot of people now who are scrambling to get the existing iPhone before it is not in stock to save a few bucks.
One of our texters pointed out that there are ads out there for, and I think I've seen them too, Bluetooth connected toothbrushes. and you kind of shrug your shoulders and say, who would want that, and why is it not an option for people willing to pay, as opposed to being foisted on all of us through, these things where we don't get a choice? Yes, you can go into an appliance store and say, I don't need the smart fridge, and you buy a regular fridge. But to me, there seems to be so much momentum towards integrating artificial intelligence that it's not going to be an add-on, an extra feature for much longer, if it is now for certain products.
Oh, yeah. I mean, pretty soon we're probably not going to have a choice. We're going to walk into an appliance store and just about every offering there is going to have some degree of AI built into it, and we aren't going to have the option of buying, the low-tech, non-AI, non-electronic version of whatever it is that we've bought. And so consumers, they really have to start sort of looking at their choices and asking themselves, okay, do I need something soon? If so, is there a low-tech option that doesn't include all of this technology? Or am I kind of stuck? Am I going to have to buy something with more features than I really wanted to, because the market has decided that everybody wants all of these high-tech doodads, and we have to be willing to pay for them. That is, we've been seeing that trend build for a while, and I don't think anyone really cared until component prices went through the roof. And then suddenly it was like, I never thought that my washing machine would cost a lot more money because of Rampocalypse, but here we are.
Has the chip crisis been resolved? Because it was during the pandemic we started hearing about chip shortages and not enough chips being manufactured. Has the market for chips stabilized now?
I wouldn't call it stable. There are steps being taken to try to resolve it. So some of the largest manufacturers of memory, so SK Hynix, Micron Technologies, they have announced plans to build new factories. And the problem here is, it's a basic problem of supply and demand. There's way too much demand and not enough supply, so prices are going up. And so the industry is saying, okay, we only had so much global capacity. Now we're going to build new factories, which sounds great. But you don't build a factory overnight. In many cases, they take years to build, and so a lot of that capacity isn't expected to actually be available for you and me until late next year or even into 2028. And so there's going to be a bit of a delay because it takes time. And then even then, the type of memory that these new factories are building, most of it is still focused on the data center market. It isn't going to go into laptops that you and I can buy. It's not going to go into our smartphones. It's still focusing on the enterprise, not the consumer market. So, yeah, we're starting to turn the corner, but it isn't going to happen as fast as we'd like. And the industry is still starstruck. They're like, oh, I can make more money selling to data centers than I can to, Mr. and Mrs. Smith at the Best Buy. So I'm going to focus on the enterprise market, and that is a problem for the rest of us.
So we have our devices we've been using that are not all that super fancy with AI. We our old electric toothbrush, not the Bluetooth enabled one. Can you give us any guidance for how to extend the lives of these things so that we're not going to have to address this in the short term, especially as the prices are really starting to spike?
Yeah, ideally, we don't want to be buying now as prices are in the stratosphere. We want to kind of have a strategy to kind of survive the storm and hopefully, only buy after the storm is over. And so we all have to start doing some serious thinking about what we use our devices for. And we have to ask ourselves, is this still doing the job that I want it to do? So is that toothbrush still doing it for me? Because if that's the case, then you don't have to replace it. Same thing goes for your laptop or your smartphone. If you've had it for a couple of years and the battery is still good and it still runs your apps and it doesn't sort of freeze at terrible moments and it still runs most of the things that you need it to do, then there really isn't any need to replace it anytime soon. There's a lot of social pressure to have the latest and greatest, but we have to start thinking in terms of what we need versus what we want. And so if you want to extend the life of your device, and I think we should all be thinking about how we do that, we should be, being careful not to overcharge it. In other words, don't charge to 100%, charge to 80%. Don't leave it on the charger all day because heat is the enemy of batteries. It shortens their lifespan. Look at apps that you're no longer using. If your device is always full, start clearing things off of it that you're not using to give yourself a little bit more space, buy yourself a little bit more time before you have to get a new phone. And so, same thing with a laptop as well. You can offload. You don't have to store all of your pictures on a laptop. You can put them on a backup drive. You can put them into the cloud, and you can kind of spin out the way your devices are loaded up with apps and software and data, and give yourself a little bit more time before you have to go back to the store to buy a new one. And if your battery isn't doing all that great, and you've had your laptop for a couple of years or your smartphone, there are options to replace the battery for a lot less than it would cost you to buy a new phone. If that's the only problem you've got, bring it into the store and ask them how much a replacement will cost. A couple $100 instead of a couple of thousand. I think most of us would happily buy in to give ourselves an extra couple years.
I have to confess, Carmi, I had never heard the advice before it came from you to don't charge your devices to 100%, stop short, and don't leave them on the charger all the time, because I do that. Yeah. I leave my laptop plugged in all the time. I charge my phone overnight. It probably gets to 100% 5 hours before I wake up.
Yeah, heat is the enemy of longevity. And so, of course, we want to charge it to 100% because that gives us the longest run time per charge. But over the life of the battery, as each cycle builds up, it actually reduces its capacity to hold a charge over time. It means that, a year and a half from now, you might no longer be able to hold as long a charge as you would like. It degrades much faster than is otherwise the case. So think about heat, think about how long you leave it on the charger, think about how high you charge it. If you cut it off, and there are settings that you can activate that will limit it. Once you get to 80%, it'll stop. And it sounds a little bit counterintuitive, and maybe it won't run as long on each charge, but you will stretch your device lifetime a lot longer than would otherwise be the case. And especially now, we don't want to be buying in today's market if it means keeping your battery alive another year or so. That gets you sort of to the point on the calendar where prices are now finally starting to come down to earth.
Always useful advice from our CTV tech analyst, Carmi Levy. Thanks very much for that.
Appreciate it, Trudy. Thank you.
All right. When we come back after the 10:30 update, we'll speak to a Montreal firefighter about lithium battery fires, how they start, the damage they can do, and what you can do with things like your kid's e-scooter in order to keep everybody safe. That's coming up.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back
2010s, the decade,
to the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd,
And more. All your decade-defining favorites all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away. The Elias Macco Show. On demand.
On demand. Don't miss a thing.
Find your favorite clips at CJAD800.com and on the free iHeartRadio app.
Lithium battery fires, the challenge they pose to firefighters. And you know what? They're probably in more devices than you might think. We'll talk about how to keep those devices safe coming up.
Voices you trust to deliver the news.
Here's what's making news right now.
And help you make sense of it.
What's scaring Quebecers the most?
The key message here, though, is
the station Montrealers have relied on for 80 years. Your station.
Your voice.
News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
Or the free iHeartRadio app.
La STM vous souhaite la bienvenue à bord.
He has an Opus card and a microphone. You're in transit with Elias Mackos, CJAD 800.
Trudy sitting in for Elias, and we are talking now about lithium batteries. If you've ever seen the videos of lithium battery fires, you know how frightening that they can be, because usually in the video versions as well, at least, they start with quite a dramatic explosion. It's a very intense fire given the size of the battery, and the fires can go on and on. We had a case recently here in Quebec of a woman who died of burns when the MacGyvered battery setup on her mobility scooter exploded while she was on it in her backyard, in her parking space in her backyard, and she didn't recover. And we've been talking in recent years about lithium-ion batteries and how there is a small but significant risk of fire. Here to help us learn more, we welcome Chris Ross, president of the Montreal Firefighters Association. Chris, thank you for coming into studio today.
Thank you for having me, Judy.
Is this a going concern for the Montreal Fire Department, lithium battery fires? Is this something that we're seeing more regularly?
For sure. I mean, there's been a significant increase over the years. You know, a few years ago, we weren't tracking it as much as we do now. Now we do track it, and we do see those numbers going up. And you mentioned it yourself, you know, 10, 20 years ago, these were present like in batteries, and they were NiCad format. Now they've gone over to lithium-ion. Now we have them in scooters. Now we have them in e-bikes. They're a lot cheaper. They're a lot easier and more accessible. You can go down to Costco now and buy things that have really large lithium-ion batteries in them.
So, there are, I would assume, special protocols for firefighters in dealing with them. What are the concerns from the firefighting angle to when a lithium-ion battery goes wrong?
Well, you know, our first concern is life safety. When it comes down to firefighting, you know, our concern is always the public and always the population, and how do we protect them? And you mentioned it in your introduction there, these are dramatic and aggressive fires. They start often without any sign, and within seconds, they create an atmosphere that is no longer survivable compared to, you know, a kitchen fire or anything else where you might have a couple of minutes to get out of the house. In a lithium-ion fire, within seconds, the piece of the room where you're living is no longer survivable. And we've seen some of those dramatic videos, and one I like to reference is the 2023 one from a train in Toronto, where the surveillance camera shows the lithium-ion bike fire start. You count to 3, and within 3 seconds, it's no longer survivable within that train compartment. The fortunate that they had in Toronto was that the train was coming into the station and the doors opened at that exact same time.
Ooh. Yeah, you're right. What do we see these batteries in? Commonly, if the Montreal Fire Department is getting called out for a lithium battery fire, what is the device?
It's really the bikes and the scooters. Those are by far, I think, the most common ones. You know, the smaller devices like shaving devices and cell phones, they might have issues, but they're not going to have that dramatic, uncontrollable fire that we'll see in something like a wheelchair or that has a large quantity of those batteries. You
know, now that I think about it, when we've heard about the smaller device fires, it's usually because they've been on airplanes and in an enclosed space at altitude where it takes time to get back down to the ground, which it kind of sets up a different situation. For people who own e-scooters, or their kids have e-scooters, or they have e-bikes, or mobility devices that are powered with these lithium batteries, is it safe to bring these things indoors? Is it safe to park them in the garage, for example, or to store off-season winter bikes in the basement?
There's a lot of recommendations with this, and it really starts down to is the product that you're buying. You need to ensure that the bike, and specifically the replacement batteries, because now it's very simple to find them online on Amazon, you need to ensure that what you're buying is certified, has a UL or a CLC or some sort of a certification that demonstrates that it is safe. I mean, that is the number one thing. And when you come down to replace those batteries, it might be tempting to buy something that's a little bit cheaper. You should be buying batteries from the manufacturer so that you know they've gone through the testing process. Once we've said that, you know, our recommendation is always when you're talking about a scooter and a bike, you need to try to keep it out of your house. You need to try to keep it out of your apartment. And specifically, if you do bring it in, you shouldn't be charging it overnight. You shouldn't be charging it when you're not home. They tend to have a greater risk when they're on an energy charge, so when they're being charged. And you certainly don't want to have this anywhere close to your bed, or specifically between your bed and the exit to your apartment or the exit to your house, such as in a hallway or something like that. You want to ensure that if something does go wrong, you're still able to exit your house as soon as possible.
For most of these devices, is it possible to remove the battery and store it separately? For example, you might bring the bike inside and stick it in the basement, but the battery you might leave, I don't know, in a back shed or out on your deck or something like that, away from the house?
It really does depend on the model. I mean, you do have some of the smaller, cheaper ones where the battery compartment is sealed. I mean, you can't even change the battery yourself. If you need to replace the battery, you need to go to a technician or completely buy something else. The larger you get and the more expensive the device you get, you do tend to find that they are removable batteries and they can be taken out. So, you know, that's something that is important that you mentioned. You could have a preventive measure of charging that battery outside, charging it on the gallery, charging it somewhere away from the inside of your house. And definitely you don't want to charge multiple ones at the same time. If one catches fire and it spreads to the other one, then it becomes a rapid issue that we're going to have to deal with. And, you know, we talked about in the beginning, you know, the first priority for firefighters is safety. My second priority is how are we going to put that fire out? And lithium-ion fires are very hard to extinguish. And the larger the battery is, the harder it is. And if you remember about a year and a half ago, we had a fire down in the port of Montreal in a shipping container full of batteries. It took an eternity to put that out.
And how did you do it in the end? Is it just a matter of pouring water on it, or do you use foam? Do you use some type of other retardant, fire retardant?
You use a bit of both. I mean, one of the disadvantages of lithium-ion fires is it generates its own oxygen, so you can't really starve it that easily. So it takes copious amounts of water over a long period of time. In the old port, we actually ended up bringing down a crash truck from the Montreal airport, which was able to put a significant amount of water and foam at the same time. And often you have to allow them to burn out. That is the true solution. solution is to control the fire, ensure it doesn't spread, and just let it run its course.
Are the emissions toxic for firefighters or anybody in the vicinity of a lithium-ion fire, the smoke that's generated?
All smoke is toxic. Lithium-ion fires are just, a heck of a lot worse. But when it comes to anything that's burning that generates smoke is an incomplete combustion. The darker that smoke there is and the more smoke that there is, it's a risk for the population. It's a risk for firefighters. And cancer is the leading the cause of deaths of firefighters in Montreal. And it is from those toxic exposures. Lithium-ion fires are no exception. They're probably more toxic than anything else that's going to burn.
I always remember Rick Lechner telling us when we were covering fires as journalists, look at the color of the smoke. If it's black, it's probably not under control yet.
Exactly. As it gets darker, it's a sign of incomplete combustion. Incomplete combustion is more toxic.
Okay. So are batteries in e-vehicles a concern? Parking in your driveway, charging in your driveway if you've got an electric car or a plug-in hybrid?
For sure. I mean, you should be charging this outside, not in your garage if you can. Don't leave it on a charger when you go away on vacation. Try to keep your car as far away from the building as possible. And, these are recommendations. In some places, when you live in an interior parking space in an apartment, that's not going to be an option for you. But when you do have those options in a single-family house, I have electric cars at home. I try to charge them in the drive around a 110 outlet away from the house. And I don't leave it charged in when I go away on vacation because, the size of that battery in the car, if you've seen those we do not put the fire out. We largely just control it until it burns itself out.
Does the fire department have any concern for the proliferation of these batteries? Because it seems out in the burbs where I live in Pierrefonds, it seems that every kid has got an e-scooter and there are a lot of e-bikes around now. So this is becoming not a household staple, but certainly much more common than it used to be.
It's getting more affordable. I mean, a few years ago, you wanted to get a nice quality e-bike. You had to buy it online. You had to buy it in store. Cost a couple of $1,000s. Now, like I mentioned, you go down to Costco and you can get them for $750, and you can order them online for a lot cheaper. You can order them for like little kids that are a lot smaller, not as much capacity, but they still have a lithium-ion battery in it. And we do know for environmental and regulation reasons, at some point in time, all cars are going to end up being electric. I mean, I'm convinced I will see that. We did know at 2035, the original one to stop selling gas cars. It's been pushed back, but it is something that's coming. So at some point in time, all cars on the road are likely going to have batteries in them.
Does that suggest that maybe the Montreal Fire Department should look at getting what the airport has in some type of foam dispensing device that can rush out to battery fires?
We're definitely going to have to adapt our strategies and our procedures as we go along. We do have firefighting trucks in Montreal that are capable of creating foam. We do have, I think, about 11 trucks that are foam equipped. They're not always in service, and they don't have the capacity of the type of water and foam as an airport crash truck. Will we see municipal fire departments having to need that in the future? Quite possibly, but we might just continue to call the airport in the meantime.
Oh, I guess that is a backup. It's right. It's a backup. Chris Ross, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for coming into studio. Chris Ross, president of the Montreal Firefighters Association. When we return after the traffic report, we are going to talk to a journalist with CTV News, the Ottawa bureau chief, Graham Richardson, because he had experience working alongside the legendary Lloyd Robertson, whose passing we are mourning today. Lloyd Robertson died at the age of 92.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Breaking news. Considered.
The
Elias Macko Show.
News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
And so we come to the end. And it couldn't happen at a more fitting time than the beginning of September 2011. It was 35 years ago this month that I agreed to come to work for CTV, and Harvey Kirk and I teamed up for a successful 7.5-year run. During that period and since, we have had the usual ups and downs in the news cycle, from natural disasters to royal weddings. And I am deeply grateful to the many of you who have stayed with us through it all. For me, it's been a rare privilege to have been able to serve in this position for so long. It's been a front row seat to history, If someone had told me 60 years ago this would be my life, I would have said they were crazy. And it's not false modesty to say that I am only the most visible member of a highly skilled and thoroughly production and technical professionals all around me here and out beyond. I can simply never offer them praise enough. I will see you along the way. And that's the kind of day it's been this Thursday, September the 1st, for all of us at CTV News. Good night.
That was the final news sign-off of CTV News chief anchor Lloyd Robertson. He died at the age of 92, as we learned late yesterday. You will probably remember him very well. He mentioned a couple of the stories that he covered during his time in the anchor chair since 1984, all types of royal visits and weddings and 9/11 and on and on and on. So a gentleman who came into our homes nightly, if you were a watcher of CTV News during that era. Also in journalism, he was considered a giant. I remember I caught a glimpse of him once. It would have been around the time that he started in the main anchor chair at CTV in 84, maybe just before that, because I think I was a journalism student. I was attending my first journalism industry convention in Ottawa, and I saw him coming down an escalator. And I was at the bottom, and I nudged the fellow student. I was going, "That's Lloyd Robertson! That's Lloyd Robertson!" Of course, I didn't have the guts to go up and speak to him, so I did not end up talking to him. But even then, well respected in journalism circles. Here to share his reminiscences of Lloyd Robertson is a man who was a colleague. Graham Richardson, CTV News Ottawa bureau chief, host of the Graham Richardson Show every Friday at noon on CJAD 800. Graham, welcome back to CJAD. We talked to you just last week. We're happy you could join us today.
Of course, Judy. It's sad, but it's not. What a life. 92 years old, and what a legacy.
Yeah, what a life, what a legacy. That's exactly how I felt when I heard the news when I got up this morning. When did you work, Graham, with Lloyd Robertson? Were you alongside him, or were you more at a distance?
Well, Lloyd was a very political anchor. He loved politics. And so when I joined the bureau here, first of all, I was in Los Angeles to start, and so he was very involved in any of the American stories we were doing, and particularly that particular year in 05-06, the hurricane season. That was Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Rita, Hurricane Wilma. So he was always very supportive, but he loved politics. And when I came to the Ottawa Bureau, I found it very quickly with Craig Oliver, with Robert Fife, and others here that what I learned, what was most valuable from him was his sense of the audience. So you're in a political bureau, you're covering stories, you want to keep going on a political story. Lloyd had the unbelievable sense of when the audience and when the country had had enough and wanted to move on. The political reporters want to keep going on all these little details. And he just understood that was important for a few days, but the country wants to move on. And there are bigger stories out there that are more important to them. And he was just a gem that way. To get on to his show was hard. We had lots of reporters, and his judgment was impeccable in terms of what was worth filing and what we could leave to someone else or not file at all.
Was he open? Were you able to consult him, for example, if you had a question or wanted to chew something over?
All the time. There are anchors, and it's infamous in the industry, who, it's all about them. And that final message that he delivered on his final broadcast is totally him. It's totally true. He's a guy from Stratford who was gifted with an amazing voice and a sense of curiosity, and an amazing team player, and he understood, like, it's a team sport, TV news. Still is. All news is. And he understood that, his role in the newsroom, how he represented the CTV National News to the country, but it was never about trying to leverage that power to make himself better. It was about leveraging that power to make stories better, to make his broadcast better, and to make the people around him better.
So he carried his power and his clout gracefully and properly, to your mind.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Like, you knew, like the fact that, look, you can't make, like, people say lots of nice things when people pass away. But, I mean, for decades, like, he knew the makeup artists' names in different parts of the country. He knew the photographers, the people in the studios. He treated them all with deep respect because he understood that they were professionals. And there are anchors who do not do that. And, they're not Lloyd Robertson. And he was to be on his broadcast and to talk to him on television at the time when CTV National News was pulling in 1.4 million people a night in some cases. It was beyond a privilege. It was just it was a wonderful part of my career.
It does sound, Graham, like you were able to learn from him both from the journalistic side and the human side of the news equation.
Absolutely. He when he wrote his book, here's another example of how human he was. When he wrote his book, he described his mother's long struggle with severe mental health issues. And back then, they gave her a lobotomy. It was awful. He said he carried her condition with him for his entire life. It haunted him. My mother had a very similar affliction for many, many decades when she became ill when I was 7. And I told him that, and he immediately called me and talked to me about it, And it's something, the personal that drives you in your professional career. He very much understood the human part of broadcasting. And your story about seeing him coming down the escalator, countless people have done that, and I wish you would have come up to him because he would have remembered you. He would have encouraged you, even though you were a student. And he was always like that with young people, understanding the role of chief news anchor for CTV National News.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. I'm kicking myself now that I did.
That's okay. Yeah.
Too shy, junior student. It's been wonderful, Graham, hearing your thoughts about Lloyd Robertson. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Anytime, Trudy. Thanks.
Graham Richardson, you hear him here on CJAD every Friday at noon as host of the Graham Richardson Show. He is also CTV News's Ottawa Bureau Chief. When we return after the 11 o'clock news, as reported by Tom, we will be welcoming Enid Stiles, veterinarian, and she will take your calls, your concerns about your furry friends. That's coming up.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
You're listening to the Voice of Montreal.
News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
An iHeartRadio station.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.